Welcome to Mastering Fundraising, a podcast for nonprofit leaders of all titles and all experience levels. Mastering fundraising endeavors to cover the most important fundraising topics with the goal of helping the audience reach their full potential as fundraisers. This podcast will share stories, tips, and guidance on the most important elements of fundraising. If you want to earn an advanced degree in fundraising, this is the podcast for you. Mastering Fundraising is a collaboration between Fulcrum Nonprofit Leadership and the 5-Tool Fundraiser, two leaders in providing relevant and expert content to fundraisers and nonprofit leaders. Without further delay, let's jump into the current episode. Please join me in welcoming your host for today, Chris Looney.
Welcome to Mastering Fundraising, a show for nonprofit leaders of all titles and all experience levels. My name is Chris Looney, and I have the good fortune to be your host for this deep dive into fundraising. Our show endeavors to cover the most important fundraising topics with the goal of helping the audience reach their full potential as fundraisers. And I always say, let's remember that if you're staff in a nonprofit, the expectation is that you are a fundraiser, even if your job title doesn't necessarily carry the word development or advancement. All of us that are working in a nonprofit have an opportunity to lend some strength and help the fundraising process. And this is especially true of those of you chief executives and executive directors out there who can do a lot of good in the fundraising arena. Today, we're super pleased to welcome John O'Gorman, one of the most respected and successful fundraisers I know. The topic of our conversation today is about donor engagement over an extended period of time. So welcome to the show, John.
Thanks, Chris. Happy to be here.
Good. Well, it's wonderful to have you. We're looking forward to learning from you and taking advantage of the very significant experience and expertise that you have in the field of fundraising. I know currently you're the Senior Vice President of Development and Community Initiatives at Forest Park Forever. And once upon a time, we used to work together in a large consulting firm. But I don't want to spoil any of what you might be able to share with our audience. So if you don't mind, take a few minutes to introduce yourself and share with us a little bit about your leadership journey.
Sure. Well, thanks, Chris. I again, where I am today is in St. Louis, Missouri. I am the Senior Vice President of Development and Community Initiatives for an organization called Forest Park Forever. Forest Park Forever is a conservancy 39 years old right now, and has what we do is we work with the city of St. Louis to restore, maintain, and to do some programming in Forest Park. Forest Park is the 1,300-acre city park, which is kind of right in the center of St. Louis and is the home to the St. Louis Zoo, the St. Louis Art Museum, the History Museum, Science Center, and many other great attractions. But beyond all of that, it also is a place where a lot of people come and really enjoy St. Louis. To answer your question about that kind of starting a leadership journey, I won't take too long in this, but it really kind of goes back, I think, that when I left college, wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do. I was in a volunteer organization. It's called the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. And Chris, I don't know if you know this, I was in Los Angeles for that first year, and I worked with a nonprofit that worked with individuals that were homeless and helped them with employment skills and finding employment. And it was great work. I found that the people that did that were incredibly heroic people, and it might have taxed me more than I could. And what I found in that organization, the part that I really enjoyed was helping capacity build through fundraising for them. I found myself, even though my job as a volunteer was to kind of work with clients, and I found that to be great work, it was really hard because I'd help somebody and there'd be seven more people that needed help that I didn't have time in the day for.
Right.
But I love telling those stories and working with the development team, and I got excited about that. Um, After that, I actually did another year with that same work, that's Jesuit Volunteer Corps, but up in Northwest Alaska. And when I finished that, I kind of got my first development-y job where I was a grant writer for a consortium of Alaska Native organizations in Northwest Alaska,
Wow.
and it was a great opportunity. Kind of moving past that, when I came back to what we called up there the lower 48, was had an opportunity to join that large consulting firm that we talked about, which was an awesome experience. I was with them for about 15 years. Really learned a ton, brought in some information, and then really was able to expand that, and got to kind of see all sorts of different areas of fundraising, and really helped to kind of grow with that. Um, I'm kind of going through a lot with that, but I was on the East Coast for much of that time. I had an opportunity with the firm after I'd been there for about 8 years to work with a large client for the firm that was based in St. Louis. I'm originally from St. Louis. It was a great
Ah,
opportunity to move back to home, even though I'd only lived here. We moved when I was 6, but it was a home base for us. We still had a lot of
sure.
family here, and great opportunity to come back and help that work with that client, and then also to with the firm start an office, St. Louis based office with them,
Perfect.
and it was great. So I did that until I had this opportunity here at Forest Park.
Right. And you've been at Forest Park for, did you say 13 years?
I'm in my 13th year. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yep. Yep.
That's great. Well, you've had a lot of different roles. The ones that you just described couldn't be more different. What's been your favorite and why?
I'm really excited to say my favorite role is where I am now.
That's
And
great.
I think as a consultant, it was a great experience, and I worked with some really neat clients that were doing some really neat things. I think what I like about what I'm doing is I really believe in the organization and the mission of the organization, and what the park does here in St. Louis, and to kind of be able to kind of be in this capacity. I really enjoy working with our team of fundraising professionals. I also, in my role, get to work with our marketing and communications team, our volunteer and visitor services team, as well as our community engagement operations. And I get to lead those teams, but then also work with some really dynamic professionals in that, and really enjoy it.
No, that's great. That's great. Well, no one sort of develops as a leader alone or in a vacuum. There's always the influence of extraordinary people that raise you up, that help you find your way and learn the ropes, whatever it might be. I'm wondering who a few of those people were for you.
I can that's great. I think of people that were leaders. So even back in when I was up in Alaska and I was in Nome, Alaska, the
Yeah, yeah, no.
a leader of that organization that I worked for, she was a terrific leader, and it was great to work with her. I mean, with the fundraising firm, and I'll happily, share. I mean, there was a lot of tremendous leaders, and one
Mhm.
who stands out was really Tom Cassane. He was a terrific person. He was very helpful, helped to guide me. And then a story for a different podcast actually introduced me to my wife. So that Tom has a lot of. I can't forget Tom.
That's a good reason to mention Tom's name. I like
And
it.
and then
Yeah.
and then and there are others. There are really others in that firm. And then I'd even say here my uh, our executive director who has been here for 15 years, so 3 years before I came on board, two years before I came on board, Leslie Hoforth, really has come. And what's kind of interesting is that when she joined our organization, she had no nonprofit experience, but just great project management skills
Mhm.
as an engineer who actually worked with the Missouri Department of Conservation, excuse me, Missouri Department of Transportation, leading major transportation projects, including realigning a highway that goes right through the center of St. Louis, and taking some very bold steps, but really doing a good job of listening to people along the way,
Mm.
and got a lot of credit for doing that project uh, on time and below budget, and then kind of coming here and recognizing there are certain skills that she had, but there's also some things to learn. She really has been a great person to work with and to learn from.
That's great. That's wonderful. I can see why you've stuck around for a dozen, 13 years. That's really great. Well, in all of that leadership experience that you've had, that you've learned over the years, have you developed your own sort of nonprofit leadership philosophy, or is there something in there that, is really important for you in the realm of nonprofit leadership?
I think it's interesting. For me, I think I find it's very helpful for me just to get very excited and very enthusiastic about the project. And I think now that I've kind of worked for an organization that I really believe in and benefit from, I'm in the park all the time, even when I'm not working here,
Yeah.
and really do see that it's something that is really it's a great thing for the community. Um, I think as a in my leadership role, as I work with other team members, I think I do want them to have that same sort of enthusiasm and that same sort of excitement. And I'd even say as a consultant, I really tried to get that, understand what someone else's enthusiasm was, even if it wasn't mine, that I could understand that and then try to kind of work with that and live with that. So I I I guess my that philosophy is that you really do have to kind of love what you do, and really kind of believe in that, because I think then you can be much more authentic as you talk to others about what the organization is all about.
Yeah, that's great. The passion, the authenticity, that's great. Super important. Okay, well, let's jump into the main topic of our conversation today, which, as we said, is about donor engagement over an extended period of time. And I know you have an amazing story of um, a donor that you've seen develop and emerge as a major philanthropist over time, and it has been a longer term story. But I was wondering if you'd be willing to share that story again with the audience. You were kind enough to share it with me the other day, and I really just thought it was a wonderful example of what's possible when you take the right steps, you give the relationship time, and you allow it to blossom, I guess, for lack of a better word. So, would you mind sharing a little bit with
Sure.
us about that?
Yeah. So, I to kind of go back, there's a family foundation that's based in St. Louis, and it kind of was an emerging foundation at the time when we kind of first I first discovered them, but all of a sudden I just started to kind of notice on a list, and a lot of it, Chris, was a lot of research to kind of try to figure out, well, what happened here, and to look at kind of old 990s, and to kind of notice that, boy, this foundation had $10 million in it, and now it has $50 million in it. What's happened? And and really it just was a good estate planning that somebody did, and two heirs of this had passed away, and then money got funneled into this foundation. And I, really tried to do work the connections of our board and our leadership and other donors that were interested to try to find a connection to this family. And one did emerge, and I was able to have a meeting with them, and they said, "Yeah, this sounds like Forest Park sounds like something that we might be interested in, and we could meet." And I think if I look back at what I did right on this, where did I get something right? It was really trying to do a lot of listening and finding out, asking the questions. What is it that you like to fund? And what is it that with our organization, I kind of knew what we did and where we are, but where might be some connections that they have, and what is it that might be a connection. And it was really, some of it was just kind of that early icebreaker conversation. And I kind of found out that the supporter said she ran her first 5K and did all of her training in the park. And so I was like, oh, that's great. And she kind of found a couch to 5K program and followed it and did it on the paths in the park. And in the conversation, she also said something that I think it was very important for a fundraiser to hear, which was that, we like to start with a modest gift and see how that goes, and then see if we can build trust along the way, and then maybe that would grow. And I'll never forget that, because I mean, she said that, and it all makes a lot of sense, but we listened to that. So that early gift that we asked for, we asked if they would consider a gift of $50,000, and we actually had some public money that needed to be matched. And so if they could give a gift of $50,000, we could do a $150,000 project, and they could be the donor that catalyzed that to happen. And what we did, Chris, was we if anybody is in kind of a public space with paths, these things don't just happen, they have to be maintained. And so we needed to do some extensive maintenance of the path. Tree roots crack things up. Parks are very expensive to maintain. They don't just happen. That's something I've learned over the last 13 years. So they like this, and we were able to do this. And what I think we were able to do that really worked well with this project was keep them very informed of, they made the gift, how we got this, what our timeline was for doing this. It really resonated with me about this building trust, and that we kind of needed to build trust. So we were able to do this and do this great project. I think I overthought how much this person ran in the park. I don't think that she did much of it. I think the 5K was a one-time thing, but I was really excited about it, so I wanted her to come out, and we did this. But we did a golf cart tour to kind of show her afterwards where we were able to kind of do this work on the path, and we're able to kind of talk about some other things. And a nice thing about a 1,300 acre park, there's a lot of challenges that we have. So we were able to kind of pitch some other ideas.
Yeah.
And Chris, this is always just this kind of tricky part is that, when do you ask for the second gift? And it was just kind of trying to feel that out of like, when would be a good time? And I think we actually just asked that question, when would be a good time?
How refreshing.
Yeah.
Why don't you just ask when the right time would be?
To approach you again. And we kind of talked about some other things going on. I think if there's maybe one thing that I felt I learned and that got reinforced in this, was really listening along the way. And we talked about a lot of different projects, and this person said, I'm not sure this one's for me, But another organization that we funded, that the foundation funded, did something like this. You might want to go and talk to them. So
Oh,
I very much wanted to talk to them. And it was not, it was really about what they've learned about this. So in that project, not to get onto all of our projects, but we were creating something that we've called a nature playscape. It was a project that it's a playground, but not with any plastic materials, but more allowing kids to climb on trees and use
wonderful.
natural materials and do some outdoor nature-based creative play. And so I did go meet with them, and actually it was very helpful to us, that we kind of learned what has worked in this space and what didn't work. So it was helpful. And I did report back to the foundation that, hey, I've had that conversation and what a great resource that was. And actually, we were able to do some partnerships with that organization as well. So that was helpful. But we found another project for the foundation, and in that case, it was a something more related to kind of water and in a way that we could save some money and save water by automating some inputs to a recirculating river that we have in the park.
Okay.
Yeah, you see, in California, you would be it would shock you to know how much we use water here, but we're kind of right at the confluence of the two largest rivers in the country, and so water is an important resource source, but it's not as scarce as it is in California. But
Right.
anyways, it is something that we should be conscious of how we treat it and how much it costs to do things with it. So they helped us with a project on water conservation, and that was good. And that what I found in that project was that they're really motivated by data. And so I was
Oh,
able
yeah.
to provide, they were very impressed by how much water we would save and what the cost of that water was. And we were able to kind of report back on after we
Perfect.
did that. That was also something that I think they were kind of interested that we were piloting that. So we were going to do it on a handful of different inputs. And if this worked, we were going to try it in some other areas. And it did. And we were able to do that. So that was great. And then we had a very big project that was kind of completing that whole waterway system and connecting this recirculating river to this big lake that we have in the park. And we were talked to them further. And this is over the course of years, Chris, which you kind of started this conversation with. So first conversations with the foundation were 10 years ago or 11 years ago, probably. And in 2017, 2018, we did ask them if they would consider a $1 million gift towards this project. And that piece of the project was about a $12 million project.
Interesting.
And that was a very serious ask for them. They do have a lot of assets in the foundation, but a $1 million gift was big. And
Serious
they
ask for
agreed.
you as well, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was a serious ask. And so and they said yes, to that. So that was great. I think it's good to kind of it was really important to us that we continue to update them along the way. And I kind of hate to say things didn't go as well with that project as we hoped. And one of
Sure.
the big challenges was we got that gift around 2017, 2018, and in 2020 the pandemic came, and we were really finally had finished all of the design plans for it. And it was going through all of the approvals, and being in a public park, we still have to go through all of our permitting and all the approvals.
Right.
And it ground to a halt once the
Okay.
pandemic hit. City agencies just weren't able to turn things around as we wanted, and it took about a year to go through approvals. And it just was important to keep that foundation informed of what was happening
Naturally.
and let them know. So besides letting them know the good of the path and giving them the tour of it, letting them know that we're having some challenges and this is the timeline that we laid out to you, we're not able to meet.
Transparency and all of that.
And they weren't the only donor we had to do this to. So we were always trying to kind of work with some of our key donors on this and to make sure that they kind of got all of this. I do want to kind of maybe a little sidecar on this was that what we were so thrilled about in the pandemic, I mean, as we were reaching out to them to say, hey, this is still a really important project. We've hit a few road bumps. Our goals are still the same. We're kind of going through with this. They actually reached out to us and said, we are recognizing that the pandemic is having a really tough impact on organizations, and we've selected 4 organizations that we think are really important to the community that are being hit, and we'd like to make an unrestricted gift to you. And they said at that time of $75,000, which was great, and they ended up making a gift of $125,000, which we were thrilled with. So I think telling our story and letting them see what we were doing was certainly helped us in ways we didn't even anticipate. To kind of go back to that bad story actually got worse, unfortunately. If by the time all of our permits were done, we hit pandemic pricing on things, and when we put this out to bid, a project that was supposed to be $8 million of construction, $2 million of design, was coming in 50% more, and we just didn't have another $4 million sitting around. So we really had to redesign, and we just kept them as well as other donors informed. And what we tried to say was, when we started this project, we had 4 big goals in mind, and we're keeping those in mind, and we're having to kind of accomplish some of those in different ways, and that's what we kind of talked about.
Sure.
And we're gonna have to do some redesign. We're gonna have to kind of see if we can do some things less expensively, and we're gonna have to do further fundraising. But we're still committed to this. What's going to slip here is the timeline, but we're still committed to this.
Yeah. So you navigated.
And we continued to have those conversations and bring the donor out at times along with others and to talk to them about how we're still focused on this. And it was good. It was great. That project, we're going to have a big community celebration, ribbon cutting for it this July, this July, finally. But it's substantially complete in parks. Sometimes, like the landscaping sometimes takes years to kind of really grow in, but it's all installed and all of that stuff. So we kind of have that, and then came this next really big project that we have, and it's $100 million project. As I said, Chris, in a park, nothing's cheap, it seems. So we're doing this, and we talked to we actually hired a consulting firm, and it's one that you and I are both familiar with, to help us with a feasibility study for this. And they interviewed this donor, and the donor said, "I've understood. Sounds great. We don't really want to give anything until what we already gave $1 million for is done." And that made perfect sense. And as we continued to talk, and it's just on a tickler that every several months just provide project updates on that and see if there's other opportunities to engage. But even if we would have some donor engagement things, but invite them to the new project and let them kind of see about it. And so we did that. So it was really just about continuing that conversation. And what we got to was that donor, through some other tours and some other things, saw that the project that they supported, to use this term again, is substantially complete. And they saw that coming in along the way, did say they were open to talking more about the project. And actually, I called them and said, "Hey, I want to know if you would be open at this time to hearing more about this because we're kind of at this point that we have to go ahead with it. And they said yes, and so that was good. And we were able to engage them, kind of give them a deeper dive into this, talk about why we feel this is so important.
Yep.
And they told us that they would entertain a proposal and ask what we were thinking. And we said it would really help us if we could consider a gift of $5 million. And they said they would entertain a proposal for that.
Amazing.
So that's where we are. And knock on wood, that was submitted yesterday. So
Congratulations.
we'll 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 the Paul Harvey rest of the story is still to come, but we're hoping
Yeah. Yeah.
that would be great.
Yeah. And so it's been a good 10 years where you've seen multiple major gifts, let's say. And one was modest by comparison to what you asked for today, but you wouldn't expect to get the biggest gift first necessarily, right? It's taken time and you've done some extraordinary things, which I don't think are random. I don't think are unusual. I think they are the measured, important, best practice type steps. And I
Yeah.
think I have a list of these kinds of things that I wanted to test with you and talk with you through kind of these half dozen or eight different things that are incredibly important elements of maintaining, building, sustaining a prolonged donor engagement or proper stewardship to help an organization continue to receive gifts, and maybe even if you're lucky enough, get bigger and bigger gifts over time. And the first one I wanted to explore with you, which you talked a little bit about, one of those things that help build trust and led to increased loyalty and giving, was this concept of personalized communication.
Mhm.
You did a lot that was very specific to them. Can you tell me? And it doesn't have to be this particular prospective donor or donor family that we want to talk to, but just in general, how do you feel about the importance or the necessity or practicality of personalized communication?
Yeah, and well, I mean, if we're wanting to get major gifts, I mean, it's clearly essential. I mean, if I'm wanting to get a couple, $1,000 from somebody, I can probably send out some kind of generic kind of, mailings. If we're looking for larger gifts and sustained over a period of time, I mean, I think that personalized communication and really understanding what is the motivator for them and what is interesting to them is key. And I think the easiest thing to do is really just listen and hear from them, what it is that's interesting and exciting to them. I really like to research too. I mean, I love to kind of try to try to get that donor in my head by just seeing, well, what else are they funding? Why might that be? And then have that in my head of when I'm having a conversation and they bring up some things, I kind of know, oh yeah, I knew that they gave to that. Maybe I can find out a little bit more about why and what was exciting to them.
Yeah.
And then that can kind of lead towards that personalized conversation and what it is that might be motivating them.
Yeah. Well, I think about the personalized communication in a lot of different ways. You started maybe with that golf cart tour. Maybe that wasn't the first thing, but it was an important thing for you to do with them that was personalized, right? And then I'm sure your proposals were very specific
Yep.
to them. And you were ticking off some research or analytics that clearly kind of hit a nerve with them in terms of the amount of water that would be saved or the
Mhm.
amount of cost that would be saved. So it seems like such an important element of that to know who your audience is, I guess, and tailor that communication to them. And then it seems like I heard you talk about the importance of regular communication following the gift. It wasn't just sort of a thank you and we'll call you in a couple years when it's time to give again. Tell me a little bit about the consistent stewardship, which I see is important.
Yeah, it is. And Chris, I mean, sometimes that can be the hardest thing because um you've gotten a gift, you feel great about it, you need to get other gifts, you kind of move on to those that you haven't yet gotten, and it's clear that you have to continue to engage those that have made gifts, which if you have a big operation, I'm we're right next to some large universities, St. Louis University and Washington University, and I kind of know they have huge teams of people, and
Sure.
it seems like a luxury if you have a finite number of donors that you can kind of work with. And I know then it's still not easy, but it seems easier
Right.
than that. But it's something that all of us, on the team just kind of need to have those significant donors, especially that we can try to kind of reach out to and have on that file to kind of, and again, know how they like to be communicated with. If it can be just an email update, it can be a note, it can be a phone call, what it is. I think I mentioned, leaders that were really important and influential, and what's great is that our current executive director just completely understands that in her role as executive director, she has an important role in fundraising, and that those personal touches, there are certain people that would want to hear from her, and we all could use the reminders, but if that's something that we're doing, then we're having a nice role in that too, of that outreach.
Yeah, no, that's so wonderful. I get it. You mentioned your fondness for telling stories. I think you used the example when you were in Alaska, right, of um, helping to craft stories and tell stories, stories that probably keep the mission of the organization at the center of focus. So, when you think about these donors, what kind of stories are you trying to develop and how important are they to continue to tell?
I think it's you're hearing in this podcast, I'm talking a lot, and so it's sometimes hard for me to not talk and actually just to listen. But if I'm in our different leadership team meetings and I'm hearing from, it's awesome to hear stories from our horticulturalists or our people that work in our what we call our nature reserve in the forest areas, and to kind of hear some things that sometimes are almost routine things that they just kind of say, and to stop and have them tell that story again, and then I can kind of tell the story that project that we're just finishing now, and I mentioned landscaping. The team is planting 17,000 plants kind of around this lake. I mean, that's really a lot. And sometimes it's just kind of listening to these things that to our team, sometimes that it's just part of their job, but they're really great stories. I mean, there can be times that that nature playscape that I talked about before, we intentionally bring kids in underserved areas in and do programming in there with them. And I hear from our education specialists that for some of these kids, there's a lot of sandy areas. It's the first time they've ever played in sand, and that their feet in sand, they get very excited about that. So, like, just hearing some of those things, those are great stories to kind of tell donors. So it's sometimes listening to that team and trying to kind of figure out, well, what really resonated with me that I can kind of pass along.
Yeah.
And it works sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, well, it does. And I kind of got excited about you sharing the fact that 17,000 plants were being planted around the lake because um, I really enjoy greenery. I love botanic gardens, and so that's something that would connect with me. You didn't even know that,
We had
but
an all staff team building thing where we went out and kind of assisted with planting. And Chris, I found out that job is not for me. I am not really good at it. But it was good team building.
well, to each his own.
Yeah,
Maybe your job is more aligned with the Run Club, the
that's right.
Forest Forever Run Club, right? So good. Well, listening. We're going back to listening. You've mentioned it several times. I'm getting the strong understanding that listening is an important skill in fundraising. I know that, but I want to make sure that we're reinforcing it because it is so true. Number five for me is this idea of making donor engagement to a two-way street,
Mhm.
not just development officer or staff member to the donor or the prospective donor, but actually a very strong give and take. And can you shed some light into how the listening part really elevates the experience for the donor?
Yeah, and I think that the two-way street part kind of to me is sometimes about, what are what are the donors' goals? What do they want to get accomplished? With a
Yeah.
foundation, sometimes it's a little bit easier because they may actually articulate what their areas of focus are and what they're
Good,
trying to
good.
accomplish. And so reading those and then kind of figuring out how that lines up with projects that we have is a way to do that. It um sometimes that comes back to that listening of just finding out from a donor that if they've made a lot of gifts around what do they think are some of the best gifts that they've made and why? What were some of the outcomes? And then try to resist the urge just to respond to say, oh, we've got something like that, but just to kind of like maybe listen to that and then remember that as you're kind of thinking about what might align and then see if that could work.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. You had talked about this donor family in ways that connected to specific projects. And it's fascinating to me that you probably talked to them about a big vision for some future of the park, but also maybe the future vision around the use of whatever project it is that you're trying to get them excited about. But both in terms of the vision and the project itself, it's interesting to me that you were pretty specific with these donors about getting them to kind of own something or connect with something very specific. It wasn't just, can we have $1 million for our campaign or
Mhm.
$1 million because we're an important organization and community asset, right? It was actually tied to some outcome, something very specific. And have you found that to be important?
Yeah, that's a good question. It feels like with the work that we do, obviously we'd love to get that $1 million that's completely unrestricted that we could do anything we want with would be great. I at least in our organization, I feel like maybe there's some type of a threshold of where that is, and it's far below $1 million for us. The the that's you're asking a really good question. Like that first gift of $50,000, I think as I heard established trust, that to me meant it would be great if there was maybe just something that gift could go towards, and then we could kind of point to afterwards, you made this happen. And that worked. I think one thing, Chris, since I've been here, I mean, we've had a couple. We've been in very large campaigns. Um, so I think that's why it's kind of oftentimes been kind of a project, based focus on a lot of those things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting because it seems as though you might start with the annual gift which is more generically tied to the operations or mission of the organization, the good name and branding of the organization. And then as gifts get bigger, they get more tied to projects. And this is a season where you're building trust. And then at some point, you might get to a point where you're asking for some incredibly large gift to be put toward endowment. And maybe there's a naming opportunity, but maybe the specific uh, beneficiaries of the revenue that that endowment kicks off every year is not specified, or you're the
Yeah.
beneficiary of an incredibly large estate gift where they've left it to the organization to use based on what is most needed, right? So it's funny that it goes, through this testing period where it has to be more specific tied to a project, but starts and ends with less specificity. And I don't know if that's just a common cycle for major gift donors, um, or not.
Yeah,
But
that's a good. I'm glad you're kind of reminding me of something that in our the big campaign that started in 2012 when I first got here that went through around 2017. A huge chunk of it was we were raising $100 million for the endowment. We worked on telling the story of what that endowment would do. We had at that time a kind of endowment about $20 million. We did some studies to kind of determine what was really needed on an annual basis to be properly maintaining the park. We knew that the city was well short of putting the maintenance that was needed into the park. And because of that, there were decades and decades of deferred maintenance that things were falling apart. So we
sure.
worked on kind of telling that story that if we could be spending $5 million more a year, which is a tremendous amount of money a year. So we had to kind of show some of those stories about what that would be. But if we could do that, then that we could work on kind of bridging that gap over time. And that did elicit a lot of, I guess we would call them unrestricted gifts, but restricted to the endowment at that time, which was incredibly helpful.
Yeah. Well, I think you did a great job of creating a vision for people of what the future looks like and what's needed to help maintain, the park, maintain um, the the services that you provide. So well done there. Um, I'm going to the next one, which was the transparency issue, which I think you covered so elegantly already when you were talking about the communication that you had to do in the good times, but also in the sort of bad times when the project wasn't going well. So we covered that. But it did bring up the other idea, which is the concept of recognition for these donors. And what's your experience about how you kind of properly recognize these donors to assure that they continue to stick around and be grateful and feel appreciated and honored by the gifts that they've made?
That's something we continue to kind of struggle with. I think it's important that we, I think all donors deserve some recognition for what they do and to try to kind of find appropriate ways in a public park. It can be a bit of a challenge in that the city owns it and we kind of
Right.
can't do have to have some restrictions on what we can do. What we've done, I think some of this comes into listening, into really kind of understanding what a person wants out of a gift and how they would like to be recognized. I mean, I think some of that, as far as what we've kind of learned from that, is again, work with our partners with the city about helping them to seeing what we can be able to name, how we can recognize donors publicly. Try to be creative about how we might be able to do some non-permanent recognition. So, at groundbreakings, at
Right.
during construction of things. And then if there are some more, instead of having plaques all over, could we agree to having kind of maybe one collective plaque that is having a list of a lot of different donors that we could put on there? Can we do that through our own publications that go out that we could recognize donors? Can we do a donor story that would also be able to recognize people that way? So I mean, I guess it kind of goes back one being creative, but then also just kind of listening about what is important, and if it and to know some donors it's not as important to them to be
Sure.
recognized.
But yet you don't make the mistake of assuming it's not. You
Right.
try to
Yeah.
create some magic. And it's a good point about how some organizations are at the mercy of the conditions they're in, whether they're state-owned, city-owned, whether
Yes.
they're
Yeah.
maybe a religious organization that shies away from placing names of donors on things that are sacred or whatever it might be, or just there's not this culture
Right.
of putting names on things versus other organizations which will name anything that's nailed down to the floor, right?
Yeah.
So a little bit of everything. One of the things that I wanted to explore quickly was the idea that engagement in the organization in some way leads to greater giving. So what do I mean by that? Board members tend to give more significantly because they're so engaged. Volunteers that are leading up the dinner committee, or volunteers that are um, involved in fundraising for some activity, or called in as experts to provide guidance on an issue. What's your experience around fashioning volunteer opportunities with the goal of getting people more, kind of engaged in the mission?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely can work, and I'm going to sound like the broken record. I think is in a lot of ways is kind of really going back and kind of listening to somebody, because some people wouldn't want to ever, have much more involvement than writing a check. That organization that I kind of have started with my long story on, they really wouldn't have not wanted to be involved, but we've had a lot of others that it's been really important to see if there's an opportunity. We can't put everybody on the board, but maybe there's certain ways to involve them. In our current project that we have a lot of different committees in there. One helping us to create a business plan for it. So we've been able to bring some people in there to kind of help with that. And they've been sincerely very helpful. And they've gotten a little bit deeper involved in this, which is a great way to have them invest in the project too. So I think there can be a lot of different ways, but we have had quite a bit of success in having people join the board, becoming more financially supportive, and then becoming very deeply supportive in major gift fundraising.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk about as it relates to strong donor engagement over time is this concept of stable leadership. Leadership that has some tenure, some history, um, not only with the community, but with the organization. And I knew about your 13 years, but I didn't know about the executive director's
Yeah.
15. And what a wrong word, lethal. What an amazing combination of stable leadership to have to really accomplish some significant things with donors over time. And it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that it isn't important. And I think it needs to be prioritized, and it needs to be reinforced as one of those more ideal and necessary conditions to really helping donors um, give to their maximum capacity to a particular organization. So, can you speak into the longevity of your team and the
Well,
importance?
it really works for us. And I'm well aware that in our profession, there's a lot of folks that don't stay very long. And I think it would be a challenge for me to be in to kind of go from to move organizations very frequently, every couple of years. I find that what you've observed and what you've said about the ability to be in one organization for a long time really does help me with the donors that I'm working with. I think they know me, they know what it's been like. I can talk about what we did over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And I know that is unusual, and I think that it, from somebody that has been with the organization for quite a while, the other side of it is it's very helpful to be able to have this history. And Chris, of our leadership team here at our organization, Leslie's been here for 15 years. The other senior vice president that's in finance and administration started 9 months before me, so she's in her 14th year, and our senior vice president of operations that is in his 8th year. So that is a great core that we have. It just really helps.
Absolutely helps. And I just wanted to reiterate it to the audience that if you're thinking about, building a strong chain that allows for major gift success to be built and sustained over time, it doesn't start and end with the stable leadership. They have to be great leaders too, but it's such an important link in that chain, along with all of the other things that we talked about today, the listening, personalized communication, meeting the donor where they are, getting them excited about particular projects, building a vision, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to thank you, John, for helping us today better understand what's possible and what's best practice when it comes to working with donors over the long term. And thank you also for being such a force for good. You've been a great teacher and mentor to so many. And I know that you've also been an incredibly successful development leader as well. You have had a great impact in the industry. And my proof of that was seeing a post yesterday by a former colleague of yours from that consulting firm who just couldn't say enough nice things about how you helped her when she was just getting off to the start of her career with that consulting firm. And she's still there and thriving, and credits you with a lot of that. But anyway, your industry is beyond measure, and I hope the interview here will continue to really bless future nonprofit leaders and fundraisers alike. So that concludes today's conversation. Thank you, John. Thank you, audience. This has been Mastering Fundraising with Chris Looney. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and be on the lookout for the next episode. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining this episode of Mastering Fundraising. We hope the conversation was helpful and invite you to like and subscribe to this podcast for more conversations with extraordinary nonprofit and fundraising leaders. To learn more about Fulcrum nonprofit leadership, please visit us on the web at fulcrumleader.com. To learn more about the 5-Tool Fundraiser, please visit us at 5toolfundraiser.com. We want to hear from you. Please share your thoughts and ideas with us at hello@fulcrumleader.com. Thank you for the important work you do to make our world stronger. We look forward to welcoming you back during a future podcast. In the meantime, take care and be well.